a little hungry. You okay? We're okay. We'll do it together. Olam chesed yibane, ya la 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 la, ya la la la. Olam chesed yibane, ya la 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 la, ya la la. Olam chesed yibane. Chesed yibane, ya la la, ya la, ya la la. Olam chesed yibane, ya la la, la la, ya la la la. Olam chesed yibane. During our Yizkor service, we're going to connect to our loved ones who have left this world. And most of the time, we're reciting Yizkor for parents and remembering grandparents, our ancestors. And with this sacred connection, we assume our role as descendants. Being a descendant is a legacy, a responsibility, an honor, a tradition. When we recite the Yizkor service, we embrace that role as a worthy descendant. And so today, let's expand on that spiritual energy and also work on our role as collective descendants, a descendant community. We, Brith Shalom, are descendants of a powerful Jewish legacy of synagogue community. And like any worthy descendant, we too are charged to carry on the traditions of our ancestors. For me, the most heartbreaking images at any Holocaust museum aren't the most graphic images. I cry the most, the deepest, when I see images of the vibrant Eastern European communities before they were decimated. I cry for the children engaged in Torah study with their teachers. I cry for the young men and women dancing the Hora in the fields. I cry for the generations of families gathered together lighting Hanukkah candles. I cry for the lost communities. In Israel, at Yad Vashem, there's an exhibit memorializing the lost communities. It's called the Valley of the Communities. And the memorial is filled with the names of thousands of vibrant communities filled with Torah, davening, fellowship, music, weddings, funerals, births, Yom Kippur services with cantors and choirs. We are their descendants. We're responsible for their memory. And on some days, like today, feels like we're doing pretty well as descendants. And on some days, it feels like we're missing the mark. When I meet random people for the first time, like sitting on an airplane or whatnot, sometimes we get to talking, and if we talk long enough, eventually I come out as a rabbi. So here's what happens next. If they're not Jewish, the conversation typically develops into some normal, mutual dialogue maybe follow-up questions about religion or leadership. If they are Jewish, can you guess what happens next? Usually, it's Jewish geography, but not when you're a rabbi. When you're a rabbi, here's what happens next. A confessional. A very thorough confessional. I'm sorry I don't keep kosher. My parents kept kosher and I didn't give it up. I don't come to shul as often as I should. My children. I don't know why I don't light candles on Friday night. I used to love Friday nights growing up. And Havdalah, I used to love Havdalah at camp. Do you even know where I can get a Havdalah candle? So it's apologies and confessions. Emotional pain as a result of not being more engaged in Jewish community and Jewish life. The guilt that's been building for decades finally pours out in this form of a spontaneous confessional. Very awkward. But it's not only rabbis who hear it. The rabbi's spouse gets it too. You can ask her when Vicky tells people that her husband is a rabbi, same thing, the whole confessional. Why can't we just have a nice chat? What's the need for that confessional? And here's my theory. It's the guilt. It's the guilt of being a negligent descendant. It's terrible. So today on Yom Kippur, we spend time in deep reflection. We expose our weaknesses. We locate our opportunities for growth. So let's do some community tshuva together, some repentance work together as a community. When I facilitate a conversion to Judaism, the conversion candidate stands before the Jewish court of three rabbis, the Beit Din, and commits to uphold the standards of conservative Judaism. I tell every candidate that there are two Jewish legacy standards of practice, kashrut and Shabbat, keeping kosher and observing Shabbat. Conservative Jews keep kosher, and conservative Jews observe Shabbat. That's the baseline expectation. Having said that, the details, the degrees, the individual customs and practices are flexible, and the range of practice in our community is wide. But I tell these candidates, you have to have a kashrut practice, and you have to keep Shabbat. At the end of the day, every conservative Jew should be able to say, I keep Shabbat, and I keep kosher. I do it my way. I do this, and I don't do that. And my lines are clear. So I don't mean to embarrass anyone, so I won't call out names. But I happen to have a report card, a research study of ritual observance of conservative Jews, as reported in the 2013 Pew Study Report. So I'll let you take a guess, thumbs up or a thumbs down. So a thumbs up is over 50%. Thumbs down is under 50%. You ready for this? So what percentage of conservative Jews fast on Yom Kippur? Over or under? Over 50 or under 50? All right, mixed. So here's what the Pew study says. 76%. Good, thumbs up. Yeah. It's even a passing grade. It's over 60, right? So what percentage of conservative Jews light Shabbat candles every week? Thumbs up or thumbs down? Thumbs up or down? 34%. 34%. What percentage of conservative Jews keep kosher in the home? Thumbs up or thumbs down? 31%. So on one hand, it's not terrible, right? On the other hand, a passing grade would be nice. Of course, being Jewish means more than ritual observance, of course. There's ethics, belief, volunteerism, philanthropy, Jewish leadership, Jewish learning. But if we can't say that we're keeping Shabbat and keeping kosher, I think we're susceptible to feeling like negligent descendants. I have a theory that there's another place besides that confessional that this angst shows up. It's in our relationship with the Orthodox movement. There's a gap between the Orthodox movement on one side and the conservative and reform movements on the other side, and that gap is gradually widening. In Israel, the ultra-Orthodox chief rabbinate is constantly disenfranchising the rest of us. They have a grip, a monopoly on the kotel, kashrut, marriage and divorce. The entire Jewish experience in the state of Israel is defined by the chief rabbinate, ultra-Orthodox community. This past summer, we were headed towards a major victory for enlightenment and equality with a kotel compromise, which was an agreement to establish an egalitarian prayer space on an expanded kotel plaza. But then, late in June, just before the construction was about to begin, the compromise plan was canceled. The ultra-Orthodox coalition flexed its muscle. One ultra-Orthodox government rabbi said that he'd rather see the whole plaza destroyed than see the creation of a mixed-gender prayer space. And the leadership who agreed to the compromise caved. And so that's where we are right now, canceled. And so letters and petitions continue to be composed and signed and delivered. We're disappointed and we're angry. It feels like the ultra-Orthodox rabbis are disrespecting our movement, disregarding our core ideals, asserting a monopoly on Jewish practice. And in our own Houston Jewish community, for a long time, we've had a relatively tight-knit, unified Jewish community among the denominations. But I get the sense that as the Orthodox community expands and shifts, particularly in the Fondren neighborhood, that the Houston Jewish unity that we've been so proud of and appreciated is in danger of splintering. And we frame the problem as Orthodox hegemony and an attempt to make progress through protests and letter-writing campaigns and complaints. And we should continue that fight tomorrow. But today is a Yom Kippur day of introspection, of looking inward. So imagine for a moment that we, the Brith Shalom community, our conservative synagogue, as a group, made an appointment to see a therapist. However you want to make that work in your head, we all go to the office together. We lay down on the couch, and the therapist asks, "So what brings you in today?" We say, "We're angry at the Orthodox community. They don't respect us." "I see," says the therapist. "Tell me more." And we go on. And off we go telling the therapist about how they're disrespecting us, how they're treating us, how they're insulting the core of our identity, how they're mishandling the situation, how they think we're goyim, how they ought to do this, how they ought to do that. And the therapist uses expert active listening technique and offers us gentle affirmation. And then, when we're finished venting, the therapist offers us some advice. Can you guess what that advice is? Therapy 101. The therapist says, you can't change other people. You can only change yourself. You can't control what others think about you. The only thing you can control is yourself. And that brings us to our Yom Kippur introspection. Again, after Yom Kippur, the campaigning, the political process should continue. But for today, we look inside ourselves. Reverend Nancy Collier, a social worker and a pastor, reminds us that by investigating our own experience doesn't mean we're condoning other people's behavior. By looking inward doesn't mean that we're assuming responsibility for causing the problem. But ultimately, self-awareness and strengthening our own esteem can be an effective and profound response. We strengthen our commitment to being responsible descendants. We're the descendants of a worthy and precious tradition. And when we're sitting down at this metaphorical table with ultra-Orthodox rabbi, when we're sitting down at the table, at the community table, across from the Orthodox community in Houston, we need to be able to say that we're a strong, observant Jewish community with integrity. So here's the Brith Shalom dream. I have a dream that each and every one of us can stand up at the community table and say, I keep kosher. It may not be the same way that you keep kosher. We keep kosher in our own way. At home, separate milk and meat. When I eat out, I order the fish and the pasta. I have a dream that each and every one of us can stand up on the world's stage and say, I observe Shabbat every week. I may not observe Shabbat the way that you observe. We observe Shabbat in our own way. We drive to shul, we use electricity, but we keep the Shabbat. We light candles, we drink the wine, we eat the challah, we spend time with family, we come to shul, we study a little bit of Torah, and we find our Shabbat rest. And while we're dreaming and sitting at the community table, I'd also like us to say that your way is fine. Kol hakavod. But we like our way better. Conservative Judaism is a true, authentic rabbinic legacy. We're a centrist practice filled with love and joy and positivity, compassion, flexibility, and observance and tradition. Free from the curses of rigidity, free from the curses of coercion and exclusion and judgmentalism. Could you imagine what that kind of esteem and worth and existential grounding, how that would change the nature of our community relationships here in Houston? To imagine how that kind of energy would shift the politics with our brothers and sisters in Israel. As many of you know, one of my models for self-improvement and tshuva is Michael Jordan. So as a rookie sensation, Michael was vulnerable to criticism. He just came into the league and he was going to take over the world. And the critics had at it. And his response to his critics was simple. He never argued with the critics. He never dismissed them. Jordan accepted the criticism as a challenge. Didn't matter what the criticisms were, he would answer the critics time after time by working to improve. One quick example. In 1987, Jordan won his first scoring title, averaging over 37 points per game. But the critics criticized his defense. They said that he can score so many points because he's saving his energy by not playing defense. He listened, he accepted the challenge, and over the summer, he worked on his defense. The following season, he led the league in steals, he led his team in block shots, and he won the award for the NBA Defensive Player of the Year and the MVP award. He would accept the criticism and turn his weakness into a strength. He would prove the critics wrong, not for the sake of the critics, but because of his love for the game. The critics provided the challenge. And so the criticism for us as a community is that we're weak on ritual practice, we're weak on observance. So this year, let's accept that criticism. Let's rise to that challenge and turn that weakness into a strength. Let's use this Yom Kippur moment to become even more responsible descendants. After Yom Kippur, I'll send out suggestions for our conservative Brith Shalom standards of practice for kashrut and for Shabbat, for us to clarify, for us to grow, for us to build our community strength together. We'll also do some work on purpose and meaning of those observances. Rabbi Yisrael Salanter used to say, I first wanted to change the world, but I found it too hard, so I tried to change my city. I couldn't change my city, so I tried to change my family. I finally realized that I could only change myself. Ribono Shel Olam, source of all, on this Yom Kippur day, inspire us to become even more worthy descendants. When we confront injustice, guide us towards protest and rebuke. And also, Adonai, help us to look inward. Inspire us to challenge ourselves, to grow higher and higher. Inspire us to accept the challenge, to embark on the journey toward spiritual discipline, ritual practice, personal observance. And together, we'll give honor to our ancestors and become noble descendants, authentic inheritors of our precious legacy. Together we say amen. Amen. In a moment, we'll begin our Yizkor service. Olam chesed yibane, yalalai, lai, lai, yalalai, lai. Olam chesed yibane, yalalai, lai, lai, yalalai, lai. Olam chesed